Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Okay, Jody Lynn. So our guest today, Matt Johnson, is a hypnotist with PTSD. Oh, wait a minute. I said that in the wrong order, didn't I? It's the other way around. He had PTSD. He became a hypnotist in order to deal with the PTSD. We're going to learn more about that today. But Matt is contacting us from sunny California. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm loving life. How are you?
Doing very well, very well. And staying in away from the cold weather. We're in the warmth today. That's the smart thing for us to do. And a good day to talk about things such as mental health issues and hypnotism and so forth. Hypnotism is actually something that I find to be quite fascinating. And I know other people are as well, because a lot of people have had very positive results very quickly, relatively quickly, from hypnotism, far more quickly than many other modalities. Not that there aren't any other modalities that are good. There are many that are very good. But there's something about hypnotism, because it gets right to the subconscious. It just really takes, it doesn't take very long before stuff happens. Why is that? Is it because of that?
What happens is most of us are familiar with the fact you have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, right? But we assume the conscious mind is the one that's large and in charge. In reality, your subconscious is thousands of times more powerful than the conscious mind. It controls everything.
And a lot more engaged too.
Yeah. It controls everything in your body. You don't have to think about your breathing, heartbeat, body temperature, how much insulin you craft or meal. Also, by your 30th birthday, up to 95% of all your day-to-day behaviors. The example I like to give for that is driving a car. If you think back to the first time you ever drove a car, your hands were 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. You're super focused on not hitting anything. Fast forward a few years, and you had coffee in one hand, cell phone in the other. You know what I mean? I'm kidding. Please don't do that. But
we don't recommend that, by the way.
Yeah. But how did something that took so much attention become so automatic, right? It's because your subconscious learned how to do it. Most of us have had the experience of driving and realizing we haven't even been paying attention. How did we not crash? Because your subconscious took over. Very cool process for driving, but bad things can happen when we teach it, things that we don't want, bad habits, limiting beliefs, negative emotions, things like that. That's when hypnosis, NLP are really, the tools to go in and rewrite those programs. Subconscious, just like a computer, it doesn't think, it just executes on whatever program is in there. And when you get, when you want to change those, again, those are the ultimate tools for doing that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And let's be perfectly honest, it's not like we don't spend a whole lot of time programming that subconscious mind, because we do. And almost invariably, most of us do it programming the wrong thing, the thing that's going to work against the exact thing that we're looking for, whatever that thing might be. Why are we so consistent about that? I don't know.
It's happening every minute of every day. You're always getting new data. For most people, human beings go what's called through the imprinting phase. It's ages 0 to 7 roughly. But what happens is your brain is taking in huge amounts of data, but you haven't developed what's called a critical faculty yet, which means you can't judge anything that's come in. And so you absorb the programming of the people and the environment around you, and before you really had a say in what got put there. And so, a lot of times those early programs are, they'll resurface in weird ways, later in life. And that's when people can really struggle, because, our culture, I'm a big believer, every form of therapy has its place, but if you've got something subconscious, you need the right tools to go in and really, to deal with that. Most approaches don't really take that into account. Most approaches are aimed at the conscious mind, which again, if you're trying to change something with, 5% of your brain, then, you're going to be there a while. You can do it, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And actually, I've done, Jody Lynn has done. I know that we can make progress that way. So it's always encouraging to know that we can do that. The part of what I was referring to is how, even with our conscious minds, we're focused on the stuff that we don't want. I mean, there are a lot of different ways we can undo stuff because we set ourselves up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Neurons that fire together wire together. So if you've got a habit that's burned, your brain has physically rewired itself to make that mental pattern, that, habit of thought, whatever that is, easier to have. And so the more you do it, the more you're going to do it. And so it's, one of my favorite parts of my job is we get in and actually rewire that stuff. And, I'll exaggerate it for the camera, but there comes a point where I can see people just, the head will kind of shake, and that is their neurology physically rewiring. It's, I'm a geek on this stuff. It is so cool to watch.
Now, you got to tell us the story about how you got into all this geeky stuff.
Okay.
Because like I mentioned earlier, I kind of alluded to the fact you had a PTSD thing, but I didn't tell any of the story. So you got to tell us the story.
Years ago, I got a severe brain injury. I was out hiking tide pools with my kids, and I slipped and landed the back of my head on a slab of solid rock. I hit so hard, my brain rebounded, hit the top of my skull, and I twisted the part here above my eyes. It damaged my optic nerve. I have no words to describe the pain I was in. If you've ever been zapped by electricity and felt that intense, like pins and needles type feeling, that's what was going on in my head.
I actually know a little bit. I didn't experience the level of injury you experienced, but I am very tall. I'm 6'8" tall. One of my first jobs was working in a bank, and I literally walked into the bank vault one day, hit it with my head, went down to the ground. I mean, it's painful. It's really painful. Fortunately, I was not seriously injured, but still.
Okay. Yeah, brain injury is there until you've had one. That's really hard to describe because there's no injury. I've had all kinds of sports injuries. I've never had anything like a brain injury. But for the first few years, I was so sensitive to light and sound, I couldn't even be in a room with the lights on. It's just too painful. I had a room I nicknamed my dungeon. I had black hefty bags taped up over the windows. Spent a lot of time there, and self-imposed solitary confinement. But I started out with the medical route. I have 4 different neurologists. First one tells me there's nothing I can do for you, then tries to schedule me for a follow-up. I'm like, why am I going to come back if there's nothing you can do for me? I didn't say that, but it didn't make sense, right? But
interesting sales pitch, but
no. Neuro number 2 tells he gave me a pill that kind of took the edge off the pain. I'm like, all right, this is progress. Can you give me something to help me sleep? Because I was going through these just brutal downward spirals where the pain made it harder to sleep, which made the pain worse. And just, it was not fun. And he didn't want to give me the regular stuff just due to my condition. And so, he said, there's nothing I can do for you. And so on to neuro number 3, right away, she says, oh yeah, let me give you amitriptyline. And it worked. I started getting a nice, consistent 7 hours a night, which was huge for me at the time. Beyond grateful to all my doctors. I would not be where I am without them. The only reason I tell that story is how many people would have stopped at that first one. You know what I mean? When you're facing something serious like that, you've really, I talk about day 2 sitting in that dungeon. I did the thing that, paved my way to get out. I made a decision. The word decision comes from the Latin root de, which means from, and cadere, which means to cut. When you make a true decision, you cut off any other possibility. I had no clue how I was going to do it. I just knew I wasn't going to stop. And so, when dealing with, the doctors and everyone else, it was, it went from, I'm, all right, this guy's got the lab coat, the piece of paper on the wall. He's, professional. And, he says there's nothing he can do for me. This is, I'm just out of luck, versus, all right, you don't have my answer. Who does? You know what I mean? That in my opinion is the difference between people who, I do quote unquote miracles, healing and things like that. It's just, you've got to take the reins. You got to, take charge of it. Definitely listen to what your doctor tells you, but if he doesn't have your answer, find one that does.
Yeah. One of the things I like to advocate is taking responsibility for your own physical health, mental health.
Yeah.
All of it, instead of just blindly trusting whatever a doctor tells you.
Yeah, and they're all human. Like,
yes,
we're all human. They're human. They're going to know different things depending on what they've been through in their life. And I like that approach because they don't all act the exact same or recommend the same things.
Right.
So one says it over doesn't mean it's necessarily over.
Yeah. If you think about it, kids growing up are told, you should be a doctor, and that may not be the right career path for them. They go through medical school and, they get their degree, and, I'm not, speaking ill of them, but I, contrast that with somebody who's like really into it, geeks out on it. You know what I mean? That's going to be a way better, troubleshooter as far as
that's true for any career path. I don't care what. The career path is.
Agree.
Yeah.
I mean, if you love it, then you're going to be in it and, absorbing everything you can versus, all right, I got my piece of paper. Now I'm set for life. It's 2 totally different approaches, but about a year and a half into it, I finally figured out, medical science was not going to be able to heal me. I'd read every study there was on TBIs. If anyone, listening to this has a brain injury, definitely look me up. I have a 3-page document of everything that I tried, everything from amino acids to hyperbaric oxygen. I can definitely help you. I give that out no charge. But
why do you think though that because I know we already have the lay of the land here. You ultimately went to hypnotherapy and made some progress there. But why do you think that made a difference with a brain injury? That's the curious part.
I'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
When I realized, medical science wasn't going to be able to heal me, I started looking out for, what else is out there. And, I was a complete skeptic, but I started getting into energy medicine and things like that. Now, lucky for me, I live in California, so I had a lot to choose from.
There's a ton of it. Oh, yeah.
One of the first things I tried was called Reiki. And I go in, and the best description I can give is she took I told you I had those pins and needles in my head. She kind of made them fly in formation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm Reiki 1 and 2 trained. So
okay, cool, same. But I just said, whoa, I have no idea what you're doing, but please don't stop. And so,
yeah, right.
Yeah. At the end of the session, I asked her, can you show me how to do that? And so I spent a few days with her, learned Reiki. I went into pranic healing, Qigong, Silva holistic faith healing, anything I could find that, I could feel the difference. I tried to just dive in and get good at it. And I started to turn the tide, did a huge amount of healing over the next couple of years, but I just could not shake that light and sound sensitivity. It's too painful to go out and live my life. So at this point, I'm wondering, do I have permanent damage? And so I found a special type of brain scan. MRIs look at the tissue, which, with a brain injury doesn't really tell you a lot unless you got something like really wrong. I found what's called a SPECT scan, which actually maps the electrical activity in the brain, done by Dr. Daniel Amen. He's famous in brain circles. He's written a ton of books, and he shows scans of like Alzheimer's patients. Looks like they got a hole in their brain just because areas that aren't functioning. So
right.
Long story short, I went and got my scan, and my brain was okay, but areas that were supposed to be dark were lit up like fireworks. And I was diagnosed with PTSD that day. I'd had it for most of my life and never even realized it.
PTSD you actually had before the injury.
Yeah, way before the injury. But I had lived my life with it and never even really realized it. And my thought process at the time was
triggered. I mean, you know where it came from?
Yeah, I do. But it was long before that. But I right away I knew what the problem was. With a brain injury, the name of the game is bringing your brainwaves down to give your brain a chance to rest and repair itself. The PTSD was keeping me in fight or flight, sabotaging the healing process. So I knew if I wanted to heal the brain injury, I had to heal the PTSD first. Yet again, I had no clue how I was going to do that. But I was familiar with, like you said, the incredible power of hypnosis. My dad, I saw he smoked a pack a day for over 30 years, and I saw him trying over and over again to quit. Pills, patches, gums, you name it, failed every single time until he got hypnotized. After only one session, he told me he never even craved cigarettes again. I mean, that's how powerful it is. One of the
I've heard that story many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, and I was also familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, from a guy named Tony Robbins.
Right.
Tony famously had a woman that had 152 different personalities. He was actually able to integrate her right there on the spot in about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Just not knowing a lot more than that, I got quadruple certified, hypnotherapy and NLP, and asked every single teacher I had the exact same question: how do you heal PTSD? And they all tried to help me, but none of them really had the answer. And so back to the internet, and for the next 2.5 years, I binged every course, every book that I could find. And eventually I put together a protocol where I was able to heal myself. And about 6 months later, I finally healed my brain injury.
So you did that through self-hypnosis?
Yeah. Just learning how to do it. I'd record, the exercises for myself and go through them. Things like bringing down the fight or flight response, dealing with negative emotions and things like that. Past events that had, scarred me, for lack of a better term. But I cannot state the power of this stuff, and it's just it seems like miracles. In reality, it's not. We're just dealing with the stuff where it lies. which is in the
I'm fascinated by the fact that you were able to do it through self-hypnosis. Now, I have to admit to a kind of a bias, a prejudice, which is that if somebody else does a hypnosis on you, it's going to be more powerful than if you do it on yourself. That's like the built-in.
I have that same bias. Yeah.
You did? Okay.
And there's part of it is if you're in rapport with the person who's doing it, you'll want to do it for them subconsciously. You know what I mean? We tend to do more for other people than we'll for ourselves.
Okay.
But they also taught us first day in NLP school, it's like your expectation of their healing will set the limits for them. So, you want to, if you expect that it's going to happen, it probably will, because their subconscious mind will find a way. There's a really fascinating study. They took two groups of people. One group reported being very lucky and the other reported being very unlucky. And one by one, they took them to a restaurant and they'd laid a $20 bill on the floor in front of them. Without exception, all the lucky people spotted the 20. And also without exception, all the unlucky people missed it. Just filtered it right out because of that one belief that unlucky people don't find $20 bills laying around. Right. So that subconscious programming controls what you'll even see. So that's how powerful it is. But, to go back to your question, if I have the expectation that you're going to heal, if something doesn't work, I'm going to try something else and then something until you get that result. You know what I'm saying? And, people tend to, again, I'm long-winded about this. I geek out on a lot. So people have a lot of confidence, when you work with me.
I think Jody Lynn likes too. So you're in good space. All right.
But we tend to have more confidence in other people, especially when they're confident, than we do in ourselves. And so I think, I don't know if that's the total answer, but I think that definitely plays into it.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes total sense. But I'm still fascinated by the fact that you had basically the same bias that I had, and you managed to pull it off anyway. That's impressive. It really is.
I studied under, some of the best of the best in both, and I just learned some incredible tools. So that's where my confidence came from. It's, I had the confidence in them that, people have in me now.
Right. Yeah. But nevertheless, you also had to have, it's kind of like what you were mentioning before, the limit of the belief of the person who's helping to provide the service is going to impact the person that they're servicing. Yeah. The same thing is going to be true for yourself, I would imagine. The limit of your own belief is going to impact how far you actually go. Somehow, this is what my brain is telling me, somehow you managed to kind of go beyond your belief level, kind of take yourself to a belief level you really didn't have so that you could allow it to work.
I knew... starting in that dark dungeon, I knew I needed to keep my mind where it was going. If that makes sense, kind of like the dollar bills. If I'm focused on, the injury or, what if this doesn't turn out so well, then my brain gets scattered. You know what I mean? I knew instinctively I needed to keep my eyes on, where I was going. And so I did not allow a negative thought in my head. I didn't allow it to stay there. But just I call it my PhD, pig-headed determination. I refused to allow anything else than complete healing.
Yeah, and you obviously had a big belief around the actual content, like hypnosis or NLP. This works. You had a big enough belief in that, which probably helped override, like, I can't be the one that does it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with my dad, his experience, and, it was a miracle to me. I was probably 8 years old when it happened. And what I'd seen from Tony, I knew the incredible power of this stuff. So, it's, that's probably where a lot of that confidence came from. Yeah.
So, okay, that helps to explain it, which is very cool. I'm liking that a lot. Do you find that there are any, I'm going to say limits in there. As soon as I say the word limits, I'm realizing what I'm saying, but I'll go with it anyway. Do you find that there are any limits as to what hypnosis and hypnotherapy can actually help with?
I don't think so. I think if you can believe it, you can achieve it, honestly. And that sounds really cheesy, but I've seen some really miraculous stuff. There's actually, exercises to, we've all heard of the placebo effect, right? drug companies are legally required to test for the placebo effect because it's so powerful. It's been shown to have up to 70% cure rate in clinical drug trials, right?
Yeah.
How does that happen? It's the subconscious has the belief, right? If you could imagine for just a second, do a quick experiment. Imagine biting into a big juicy lemon, right? Imagine crushing that between your teeth, feel that juice squirt in your mouth. Now, you just start to salivate just a little.
Oh yeah.
Where's the lemon?
I don't have one.
Only in your imagination, right?
Yeah.
You just create a physiological response with nothing but a thought, right? You communicated that thought to your subconscious, which controls not only your salivary glands, but also that pit in your stomach when you're nervous, or the tightness in your chest or whatnot. Also, my personal opinion, chronic health conditions, those have been linked to stress over and over again, right? Going in, when we go in and change that programming, the subconscious realizes, hey, let's handle this in a different way. Just to show you the power of it. Dr. Bruce Lipton in Biology Belief talks about beliefs can literally reprogram your DNA, switching genes on or off. Way back in the day, Dr. Bernie Siegel from Yale did really fascinating research with multiple personality disorder. He saw his patient's eye color change, going from brown to blue. Scars, physical markings would disappear and reappear. Health conditions like high blood pressure would disappear depending on what personality was coming through. I mean, that is the incredible power of your subconscious. And I just seeing evidence like that, I honestly don't I don't know how to change somebody's eye color, but I know from him that it's possible.
Dr. Bernie Siegel, that's how you do it.
I would never put a limit on it. No.
Yeah, I get you. That it's just astonishing. It really is astonishing, and it's something that I'm actually going to be diving into personally more and more, just because I'm feeling more and more drawn to it. Nice. But let's continue to carry the conversation on in this conversation, just because that always just fuels me anyway. I'm curious to know when you engaged in trying to hypnotize yourself, or at least to use the therapy on yourself. I'm still this is my own block that's in place. I can tell that's what it is. Okay. But how did you get past your belief? Because you had this doubt, and I mean, like you said, you kind of trusted the people that were teaching you, but still you have to sit down and actually do it.
Right.
And at that moment, that's when you're going to be most, it's like looking in the mirror. You can't avoid the fact that the person looking back at you is you.
Yeah. I was fascinated by it. And, the people that I learned from, I became a fanboy, but it was just such, learning it. I would go through the exercises in my head and just see, whoa, this is incredible. And so when I, would later do it under hypnosis, I already had that belief. I knew what it could do.
So you basically had got yourself some minor results, just to kind of feed you the idea this stuff actually has an effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of like the one little step at a time approach.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I mean, at that point, what did you have to lose? Like, you had everything to gain and nothing to lose, because everybody was telling you this will work or that'll work, and those things weren't working for you. And you
trust me, I tried them all. Yeah,
exactly. So really, at that point, if you're so focused on I'm going to heal myself, or I'm going to heal this thing, and it is possible, what do you have to lose to try doing it on yourself? I mean, you'd probably take it even to the next step. If it wouldn't have worked, you probably would have found somebody, taught them your protocol, and said, do it to me.
Yeah. If you think back to being a kid and your favorite game of pretend, right? For me, it was, my buddy and I, we'd have sticks as guns, we'd go play G.I. Joe, hunt each other in the woods and stuff. At some level, that gun became real in our imagination. You know what I mean? If part of us was hanging back saying, no, it's just a stick, then we lost some of the impact, right? The same exact mechanism works in hypnosis. To the degree you can just dive in and be a kid again and play pretend, that's the degree that you see the change. So I knew that at the time, and I'm pretty good at doing that. So, that probably played a lot of, played a big role in me, succeeding.
Well, that also kind of hints at why it might be so effective in dealing with childhood traumas, because when's the best time to think about, what it's like to be a kid? Well, it's when you're a kid.
Yeah.
When you're experiencing all this stuff. So I can see where there's some malleability there you can play with.
Yeah, and in that alpha, or in that imprinting phase that we talked about, the 0 to 7, you're in what's called an alpha brainwave state, which is very close to hypnosis. And so when you get into hypnosis, you're actually very very close to the brainwave state that you were in when you picked up all your crap. So that's why it's makes it easier to go back and not only access those programs but change them.
So.
Wow.
To whatever degree that we can, obviously, we're not talking about a particular case, so you have to be generalized here. But when you're helping someone who has had something that goes back to childhood and you're trying to rewrite some of that programming, describe how you take them through that. Because, I mean, anybody who knows anything about therapy or anything like that knows a lot of that can be pretty traumatic to go back to, especially, depending on what the severity of the trauma was. It can be a major deal. So how do you walk through this with hypnotherapy?
First of all, I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose or treat any kind of conditions. I help people with mental processes, right? So what we'll do is first we want to bring that fight or flight response down, right? That, when your guard is up, it's really hard to change. So we focus on bringing that down first. I have processes that I do. We'll deal with those memories. We'll kind of, you guys are probably too young to remember records, but once you scratched a record back in the day, it would never play the same way again. We kind of do the same thing to memories. We just, you still have your memories at the end, but we've just taken all the emotional sting out of them, if that makes sense. We've showed your subconscious, hey, this is not a threat anymore. And that's a huge release for people. I have a process that I use called timeline therapy for negative emotions. Your timeline is just how your subconscious processes time. And so there was a time before you knew what anger was or sadness or fear. We can go back to that time in your neurology where you didn't even know what it was, where you're free from it, and we can use that to clear it. Beyond that, I have hypnosis exercises I do to, physically clear, stress and, all the garbage out of the body, things like that, and stuff that we can do I have a process that I take people through where before you took on a body and before you picked up any of your crap. And so we can undo a lot of those programs. I do a lot of work with Tony Robbins and his 6 human needs. Everything human beings do is a result of one of those needs. So we just rework how you meet them in healthy ways as opposed to, whatever's going on. And then, we use that to clear all your crap out of your timeline. But again, it's different for everybody. It's, there's so many, like I had no clue that it was even possible for me to have PTSD. I just, again, I thought that was something soldiers got, right? But, it's, once I started to get into it, soldiers, child abuse, domestic violence, natural disasters sometimes, first responders is a big category. There's so many people who are suffering out there right now. And, it's different. If you were a soldier and you got something on the battlefield, you were an adult for the most part, your personality is pretty much formed. Whereas if you were a little kid and something happened to you, that plays so much into your identity. Kids form those false beliefs about themselves. Mom or dad are fighting. I must have done something wrong is really common, but we come up with those false beliefs and it drives us decades later and we're not even aware of it. It's all, by definition, subconscious. It's under the radar. And so it's a big part of what I do is getting people back in touch with their subconscious and seeing, oh, this is how I'm doing it. No wonder I've had, I just had one a couple of weeks ago. She realized in the middle of hypnosis why she had migraines because she was, stressing out her face, right behind her eyes there. And she'd been doing it for decades, never even realized it.
Wow.
It's just one of the pioneers of hypnosis. Milton Erickson was a brilliant hypnotist, but he was telling people, hypnotists who he was training, your clients are your clients because they're out of rapport with their subconscious mind, which makes a lot of sense.
It
and
does.
So that's one of the big things that I do is I just get people back in touch with those processes so they can really tune into what's going on under the radar. And once you know about it and, once you have the tools, then you can take control of it.
Mhm.
I'm loving that.
Yeah.
And Jody Lynn, I've actually talked about this offline so much. We don't really talk about much on the show, but we have talked about hypnosis and hypnotherapy and so forth offline. I mean, Jody Lynn, we actually were talking about it a couple weeks ago. But what are you thinking about right now? We've already kind of you've chimed in a few times, so I get some idea what you're thinking about. But what are you thinking about? Where
Mhm.
what Matt's talking about?
Well, I think it's so interesting. Like, I believe that every disease is something from, like, it's dis-ease, something
Mhm.
mental that's going on, trauma stuck in your body, whatever. I believe that. And at the same time, as you were talking about your brain injury, I never would have thought about the brain and those functions being captured by your subconscious mind, essentially, and then causing problems after brain injury. Like, for me, I was in a car accident 2024, and I had a really bad concussion, so they think I have a traumatic brain injury. I'm going for one of those scans at some point.
Good.
But it's interesting because now that you're talking, I'm sort of relating some of the things that I've gone through. Like, I felt like a different person for a lot of the last, like 18 months.
Yeah.
Like, even handling stress or like negative things or whatever, I had built up for so many years, all of these things, tools to be able to be like, okay, water off a duck's back and move on. And I would just be so calm about a lot of things. And like, that was gone. I was like a rage machine, or like all these different things that I never, even headaches, never thought about that being connected to subconscious things. So it's making me think right now, what's going on there?
Yeah, and every brain injury is different. It's like a fingerprint, and you've got to realize you change the hardware, right? You physically change the brain, so it will respond differently now.
Yeah.
Just to give you a little bit of my story, I was on the wrong path in life, and I had no clue I had PTSD or any of what we're talking about today. And if I hadn't gotten the brain injury, I never would have even realized it. And
I was noticing that. Yeah.
yeah, and I never would have gotten into the stuff that I'm into, and I'm obviously I love it. I'm geeking out on it. You can't get me to shut up, but it's
Love it.
I don't want another one, but it wound up being a gift for me, and it can be for you too. But you got to decide that you're going to make it one. You know what I'm saying? Sitting in that dark room, I used to go on these 8-hour meditation marathons, just trying to, do everything I could to heal myself. And when you do something like that, when you go through that much work, it changes you as a person. And so, when you start diving into, subconscious and the right tools and things like that, you can sculpt who you become. You take control of it.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I feel I've learned so much from that point. I never looked at it from like the brain injury side of things, because all these things are just starting to come out now, a year and a half later, that, oh yeah, it's your eyes weren't working, or this or that, or like that's the concussion, that's this. Nobody tells you. You're going to have incontinence after a concussion or something, or a brain injury. And you're like, oh, okay, that's why. Okay, got it.
Hit me up after the show if I don't remember. I have a 3-page document of everything that I try, everything, amino acids to hyperbaric oxygen, right? And I gave a presentation on it to the San Diego Brain Injury Foundation, where I explained, all the hair brain treatments and what they do. But definitely more than what your neuro is telling you. I got to the point where I was teaching my neuros.
Yeah,
but
I love that.
Hit me up. I share that no charge. I just have it on Google Drive. I'll send you a link.
Well, and I just love the way that you look at life, and the way that you looked at that problem that you were going through. Obviously, that came from somewhere before. You were already in that belief system of like, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to heal myself. Something was there before, I would assume, before the brain injury, that like a belief system that led you to like, I'm making a decision. I can do this. And
the opposite was. And what happened was, I had, like I said, it was like several years of, basically solitary confinement is what they call in prison, but a lot of soul searching in that time. It's like, oh, how did I wind up here? And I had, again, I severe anxiety, depression, all kinds of stuff that happened to me, or, woe is me type attitude. And I realized I did not have the luxury of being that way anymore. I had to, take control, and if I wanted to make it out of there. And so, that's what I did. And that's, it's where the positivity comes in. It's just that's a standard that I have now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I can't believe it wasn't there before.
I am a very different person now than I was, before that happened. Like I said, it wound up being a huge blessing. I like the guy that I am now a lot better.
Wow.
Well, the story you're telling is actually very common here on the show. Now, I mean, not so much about the brain injury and all that, but the story of having gone through what we call it a crash and burn moment. You went through a really severe crash and burn moment, came out the other side. And even though you never want to go through it again, you're so grateful. It's one of the best things that ever happened in your life. That plays out in interview after interview after interview.
Yeah.
I see the same thing. The pattern that I notice is most common is we go through stuff, usually in childhood, that, breaks us, or, you're not broken, just, running bad patterns, but, it impacts us. And you have a choice at that point. You can either, wallow in it, and, a lot of times it's justified, what they, the stuff that, I've dealt with a lot of people who you would think have charmed lives, but they don't. They're just really good at hiding it. But I had no idea how evil people could be to each other until I got into this line of work. It's sad, but you can either, wallow in that, or you can just, make the conscious choice that I'm not going to let them take today from me too. You know what I mean? And reclaim your focus. Every human being has complete control over two things: what we focus on and the meanings we give to it. The ultimate example of that is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was in Auschwitz. He was a Jewish psychiatrist and saw his family die in there. But he noticed an interesting pattern. People who developed what he called a compelling future. And a lot of times that was just, I'm going to get out of here so I can tell the story so this never happens again. Those were the ones that made it out. The people who got in there and threw their hands up usually didn't last long. And so it's, again, it's your life. You only get so many trips around the sun. What do you want those to look like? I encourage people, think of yourself as 100 years old, sitting in your rocking chair, looking back on your life. What do you want to be looking back on? And, just start to reverse engineer it. All right, what do I need to do to, today, this week, this month, this year to make that a reality?
That is one of the fascinating things, how different people respond to the same kinds of negative situations.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, we could come up with all different kinds of categories. You picked two categories. One category, person who just kind of falls in on themselves and doesn't do anything. The other person takes control in some form and moves forward. But however you categorize it, there are differences in mentality that are associated with it. And that's what keeps going through my mind as we're talking about hypnotherapy, because hypnotherapy is also about impacting that mentality. So it's basically adopting a mentality that opens yourself up to changing your mentality.
Yes. I like that. It goes back to, I talked a little bit about the 6 human needs, right? In the former category, somebody who wants to wallow in it. And I've been that person. I'm not,
it's not about being judgmental.
I'm not saying anything negative about anyone, at all. It's your life. It's your choice. I just want to, outline what that is for you. But one of the 6 human needs is significance or importance. Some people get significance by the way they dress. Some people get significance by, just having the biggest problem, right? Bad example of this, 9/11, Bin Laden got significance to bring the towers down. The firefighters got significance by risking their lives for strangers. Same exact need, just totally different ways of meeting it, right? How are you meeting yours? And is it healthy for you?
Which is probably the one question that more people are asking of themselves now than ever before. That's at least what my perception is. Jody Lynn, you're a coach, so you may have a similar perception. I'm not sure if that's always the perception of everybody out there, but I'm telling you, I just see more and more people asking that question of themselves every single day. You probably do too, because you're dealing with people as a hypnotherapy coach.
Yeah. I deal with people a lot on like identity shifts. You know what I mean? Just redoing their self-concept and all that. And I tell you, especially since COVID, there's people are feeling so disconnected. Social media and phones definitely do not help. We're cutting off our connection to other people and trying to get it through a screen.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not good. That's one of the things I did a course back in the day. And one of the very first things I had people do was I put them through a hypnosis to make them dislike social media. Because I knew they wouldn't finish the course if they were stuck to their phone. So we just got that out of the way. Right. But yeah, these things we carry around in our pockets, those little attention span destroyers they're so addictive and destructive to your attention span. And so, I turn off all notifications except for texts in my calendar. So clients and my kids can get a hold of me, but Starbucks can't hijack me with their latest promo. And I usually keep this thing in a drawer. And, so I have to work a little bit to get to it. I try to keep my screen time down below 15 minutes a day, but just because I see the destruction that it does, try it. So seriously, try it. And you can use the 2 millimeter approach to start where you are. If it's, however much time it is, try to cut, 10% off or, half hour off, and just try cutting back. You will gain a level of clarity and focus and happiness that will seem weird to you at first. But once you've had it, you won't go back.
Mm-hmm. That's what I noticed going out to the country. Since I've moved out to the country, I grew up in the country. I grew up on a farm, and then, make my way to a city, make something out of myself. Right. And I ended up literally like 5 miles from where I grew up here. And I love it. It's the most amazing thing. It's funny that I had such a wildly different perspective that there was nothing good here. Yeah. But now I really see it, like going back into the city. I feel the energy shift. I feel everything change, my own system included. It's different being out here. And it's so funny. We have like a block party for all of the neighbors and whatever, like a crime watch kind of thing. Everybody gets together at my parents' farm, and we have this big to do. And I was trying to get everybody onto like a WhatsApp, and all the old guys are like, well, I don't know how to use my phone and la la and whatever. And they're like, where's your phone? And I never have my phone on me.
Good for you.
I have it in my car or like whatever. I'm working, or I'm here to be here. Yeah. So I don't have my phone on me to show you any of the things. And they thought it was hilarious. And also they were, blown away that being my age, that I wasn't tied to my phone at that time. But I understand what you're saying. And there's so much clarity and so much more peace.
I'm starting to see a little bit of a backlash to it. I don't know if you guys have too, but I think that's going to be one of those things where we realize what we've done to ourselves. And so people start to rein themselves in.
But it's already happening.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. I mean, we've had guests on the show who were in their 20s. I remember this particular couple that came on, I'm going to say within the last year. I don't remember exactly when. But they came on to tell us about how they had a special retreat with their friends where they all went off to a place together, and they all put their phones away for an entire weekend. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were in Colorado. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. Absolutely.
You rejoin life.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling when you first do it, but once you get a taste of it, you will not go back.
Yeah.
I think perhaps it's one. My generation grew up without the phones, so for most of our lives, we didn't have that to deal with. So even though I have the phone, I keep the phone on me all the time. But I'd be amazed if I did 15 minutes of screen time a day. Yeah. I don't think it's even close to that. It's probably closer to 5.
Yeah.
So for me, but that's because I'm used to not having it. I have the habit built in. For someone who doesn't have that habit built in, I can see that can become a problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've probably never got over a couple hours a day on my phone, which for me is way too much. But I have literally been working at my computer, and my hand will just automatically get up and reach my phone. It's like, whoa, all right, this isn't good. That's when I started putting it in the drawer, and I started out putting it across the room. So I had to physically get up to go walk over to it. That's a good way to break the habit. But
I've noticed that watching TV, just automatically pick up your phone and I'm scrolling and I'm like, what am I doing? I wanted to watch the show.
Dopamine hits. Yeah,
it's just the
Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and those guys have entire armies of nerds who engineer that phone. That's, you know, they're doing 1 million tests a second to see what holds your attention better and optimizing for that. And that's why we are where we are.
Well, I think that's also pointing to part of what our society is transitioning on. I mean, you've already made reference to the fact that people are tending to kind of push back against it. I would go a step further. I would say that what humans are learning to do is something that humanity really didn't know how to do before, except for small minorities of people. And that was how to discern what they wanted to give their attention to.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say this is an entire age of discernment, not just what do I want to give my attention to immediately, but what do I want to give my attention to out in the real world? What do I want to give attention to in my long-term life, my immediate life? What do I want to give my attention to with my family? All of that has shifted because we've been inundated with this huge amounts of data. And so the first time the entire population is having to decide, what am I willing to put up with here? What am I not willing to? And I think it's actually strengthening us. It's kind of like a mini crash and burn kind of situation. You know, we're faced with it. We're dealing with it. And many of us are kind of changing our minds about, okay, here's what I'm willing to let in. Here's what I'm not willing to let in.
It's become a crisis for a lot of people. You know, I have 2 teenagers and I fought that battle for, you know, I knew what it was doing to their brain, but at the same time, I also knew that, you know, all their friends were on Instagram and TikTok and all that. So if I took my kids' smartphones away, which I wanted to do, but, you know, then I'm kind of isolating them. So I struggle with, where do I draw that line? You know what I mean? And we tried screen times and my kids would factory reset their phones and get around everything. Wow. Seeds were planted though. My oldest told me, you know, she said, Dad, I was so mad at you for that, but now I see why. She said, my friends can't even make it through a 30-minute TV show. They don't have the attention span for it. And so they do get it. Wasn't fun in the moment, but, you know, they do appreciate it later.
Yeah. It's also fascinating to me how the young have more to teach us than we have to teach them. And that's an example of it right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Jody Lynn, you got anything else that's on your mind before we move to the closing phase that we always go to?
No, I'm just loving this conversation.
Yeah, I'm loving it too.
Thank you.
And oh, by the way, actually, well, this will tie into what we're about to do anyway, because the question I always like to ask you first as the guest is, you know, I presume that you like to have people reach out to you to find out more and learn stuff from you, and you can share stuff, maybe talk to you about your service, that kind of thing. But you also mentioned the 3-pager that you have put out there. How do they get hold of that?
Just send me a message. You can find me on Facebook. You can go to my website and drop me a line. But my website is mattjohnsonnlp.com, mattjohnsonnlp.com. And I have a free course up there. It's called Calm on Command. It's basically we're taking you through how to physically reset your nervous system, get it to chill out, how to deal with, you know, intrusive thoughts, you know, negative thoughts, inner critic, all the things that cause stress. We're giving you a boot camp, and there's also a hypnosis in there that'll I call it deep emotional detox. We're basically gonna wipe that stuff out of your body, but you know, that's all for free. You can get it up there. For the brain injury stuff, just drop me a line.
That's very cool though. Yeah, that's very cool. And I especially like the fact that you have a 3-minute thing that it's not just free, it's something that you can apply in 3 minutes and you're going to get a result.
Yeah.
So many of the things that, I mean, because people are always trying to help out and they're giving things away when they're coming onto the show and so forth. But very rarely can you actually apply something and get something back immediately out of it.
Yeah. One of the first exercises is I call it unspinning fear. If you guys are up for it, we could do it right here on the show the result. But think about something you're stressed about. You know, it could be an overdue bill, conversation you don't want to have. Maybe a person intimidates you a little bit. Think about it and notice where that stress comes up in your body. Point to it. Now, in your mind's eye, if that feeling had a color, what color would it be? First impression.
Red.
All right, cool. Is there more than one color?
No, it's red.
Okay. So that red feeling, if it had a shape, what shape would it be?
What shape would it be? Well, I have a direct bodily association. It would be the shape of my jawline.
Okay. All right. So that red jawline, that feeling, if it were moving, what direction would it be turning in? If it's hard to tell, try turning it one way than the other, see what feels more natural.
What direction would it be turning in? I don't know that it's even turning.
Okay. If it were, what direction would it be going in? Try turning it one way than the other. See what feels natural.
All I get is the feeling of going from one side of the temple to the other
Okay,
side.
perfect. So just take that process and reverse it. So for most people, it's going to be turning in a certain direction. Try the opposite way and just see what that does to the feeling. Now, find your favorite direction, whatever that is, whatever feels most peaceful, most empowering for you. And you can spin it up in that new direction if you'd like, make it go faster and faster to amp up that feeling while you drain all that color right out of it. Just make it totally transparent in there. And then fill it back up with whatever color you like. Some people like gold or pink, green or blue, whatever feels most peaceful for you. Still spinning it in your favorite direction, your favorite color. Try adding sparkle to it and watch it start to swirl throughout like a candy cane or one of those poles in front of a barber shop. Most people who did that exercise will feel a physical shift, right? That's one of the exercises in the free course, by the way. But it's what we did was we took, like I said, your subconscious controls everything in your body, including that pit in your stomach or your jawline or whatever that is for you. We gave it a visual component, right? We gave it a color, a shape, a spin, right? Once we do that, we can then start to play with it. We do the opposite of that. No, get rid of the red. Let's, fill it back up with this new color. Let's, do the sparkle and all that. That tells your subconscious mind, all right, we're going to handle this differently now. And that leads to physical body changes. I like to use that one because it's easy and quick. Sure. That right there is NLP. That's how it works. We're just communicating to your subconscious mind. Let's not do this. Let's do it this way.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that too. So, okay, Jody Lynn, time to go to you. And she knows exactly what I'm about to do here. But
okay,
Jody Lynn she's like you. She's a coach. She's a money coach, but she coaches people, and she has a tremendously fabulous ability to just tie things together in a way that is just the absolutely optimal, coherent way of tying it together.
Oh,
and
nice.
I like to put the pressure on by telling her this.
No pressure. Yeah.
I enjoy this part so much. But
no pressure felt. I'm just kidding. I feel the pressure and I welcome it as I, spit some great things out. This conversation is so amazing and wonderful. I think because our society today is distracted. Our attention spans are like of a goldfish, squirrel or whatever. It's so small, and we're focused on a lot of what's going on outside of us rather than what's going on inside of us. We've lost this connection with each other and with ourselves. And it's such a beautiful thing what you're teaching, Matt, to take control again and to choose your own destiny. And I've always been a firm believer that we can do it. We can make a difference in our lives. We can change anything in our lives, but there's so many people that are stuck because of the things that they've been through, the things that they've experienced, and what they've been told, that whether it's by doctors or professionals or, their parents when they were a kid, whatever it may be, that you can't, that you're stuck. These are your circumstances and there's nothing you can do about it. And your story today is just another layer of testament that no matter what, you can do something. You can make a change in your own life. You can change your circumstances, and you can choose for something better. And I love the quote that you had at the very beginning: a true decision cuts off all other possibilities. And that's really what we were talking about today, is that possibility that change is possible and that it can work for you, whoever is listening to this. So thank you so much for that message today, Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, you said it so much better than I do.
I didn't oversell her. I mean,
she delivered. Yeah.
It's one of my gifts. So.
It really is. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I love you. You're just fabulous on that.
Thank you.
something else I want to kind of jump onto here, and it ties into what Lynn was talking about. But it's astonishing to me, and it's fascinating to me how we've had other hypnotherapists on the show before. You're not the first one. I'm curious. This is kind of a setup the way I'm saying it, but I'm curious to know what your answer is going to be, because I asked them, "Do you have a book?" And none of them have had a book. And I'm thinking, wow, these are some of the people who have some of the most amazing stories to tell, and they don't have a book. Matt, do I dare ask you, do you have a book?
I have one in my head. Does that count?
That
is one of my goals for 2026 is to write my book. Yeah. It's one of those things. If you're struggling to write a book, a great book on that is called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. But he talks about just basically right for the wastebasket every single day. I'm kind of hammering out the outline for my book, and once I get it, then my brain will wrap around it, and I'll become obsessed until I get it done. But
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, you've already demonstrated that you have that ability to obsess in a very positive way. So I can imagine that's the way. I mean, many people have different experiences of writing books. I've written, Jody Lynn has written. When you write a book, you're going to do it your own way. For me, my first book took me 9 months. My second book took me 2 weeks. So, wow. I mean, it kind of shows how I tend to progress on things. And I'm sure that you're going to do kind of a similar thing with your book. I mean, I get the sense that your book, you're going to be focused on it in your mind for, I don't know, months, perhaps years at a time. And then when you write it, it's going to be bam, it's going to be fast, because you're just going to race through it to get the whole thing down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my guess, but that's what I think is going to happen.
I'm motivated to get started now. Thank you for that.
Perfect.
Well, it actually leads up to the last thing I like to do on the program each time. And boy, this is one time I really love doing it. I like doing this every time, but this is one time that I really love doing it. Because, well, we've been making mention of it. I mean, you mentioned all the stuff about the phones and how we're glued to the screens and so forth, that we're in the 21st century. We're doing stuff that, like I said, I didn't grow up with this stuff. I mean, this is, relatively new to me. It's relatively new to all of us. And it has come along with all kinds of really wonderful things attached to it, because you're in California. I'm in Connecticut. She's in Alberta, Canada. I have other co-hosts in other places too. We can do these conversations like we're sitting in the same living room. That wasn't possible 30 years ago. And I love that. It's a wonderful thing. And it enables us to share information with people that we would never be able to reach before. I mean, we can do it through the social media. We can do it through courses that we offer. We can do it through coaching programs. There are lots of different ways that we can impact people. And many, many times we're impacting them in ways we don't even know about, because they're just picking it up. They're seeing something, they're hearing something, they're reading something. And I noticed something. I said, you know what? We're not getting credit for that.
True.
I said, well, we should do something about that. So Matt, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, and never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about just because you're sharing your message, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I think it's really important. That's why I make it a practice to do this, because we need to appreciate that. We need to be appreciated. We need to appreciate others. I mean, Jody Lynn and I have talked so much about the power of appreciation. There's a really easy way to appreciate it, and to do it every single day. So I do it with every show.
You guys are, law of attraction. I remember the movie The Secret, the guy who crashed his plane, and he didn't even speak. All he could do was blink his eyes. And he told, blink, when, they were doing the letter thing with him. But I remember he told him, I'm going to walk out of here by December. And they're like, no way, you're going to be a vegetable the rest of your life. And he did it. And that story really helped me when I was sitting in that dark dungeon. And so just knowing a story of somebody who's made it, what I went through was nothing compared to what he did, so that it gave me that confidence that, it can be done.
Well, that's part of the reason why I thought about a book, because I imagine when you write a book, you're going to also include some of your own stories and the stories of people that you've worked with. And stories like that are inspirational. Yeah. They help us to believe that whatever we're dealing with can actually be dealt with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we need it. That's how we get to that decision stage that you mentioned. That stage where we just cut off and say, okay, I'm doing this no matter what.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will tell you, since we're on the topic, there was a study where they, when doctors told patients you have 6 months left to live or whatever, 50%, half of the people died on the exact day the doctor predicted.
Wow.
That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
But, people, when they tell you it's impossible, that means it's impossible for them. They are not the, there are very few people who geek out on the subconscious and, what's possible more than I do. I will never put limits on you because, people astonish me all the time. You have just an incredible ability. No one ever, fulfills it. If you have a hard time believing that, look at somebody like Stephen Hawking, couldn't even speak, and he changed our understanding of the universe. You know what I mean? You have potential beyond what you can even imagine, and you just have to believe in it. And like I said, develop your own PhD, a pig-headed determination that I'm going to find the way, or I'm going to make the way.
Well, do us a favor, keep geeking out on it, okay?
I intend to, yeah.
Exactly.
We appreciate it so much. Thanks for joining us, and keep doing your stuff. And we look forward to hearing when the book is out. So let us know about that.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.